Good morning and welcome to the 2018 Finance and Budget webinar. I'm just the Department of Education, State Aid and School Finance. And so the first thing I want to make sure is, can everybody hear and see us before we kind of get going? Can't hear anyone else. I think we're okay on that. Do you have the microphone, Bill?
Your sound is kind of broken up.
Okay. Can you
do it up here?
We're going to see if we can move it closer here, if that'll help. Maybe closer.
That's as close as it gets.
Oh, is it? Okay, is that any better at all? Are you hearing?
Talk for a little bit.
Still breaking up.
Period of time, and we'll be able to know better.
Okay. I think maybe if you don't hear very well again, let us know, and we can readjust or move people down. Let's see. And I apologize. We have kind of a dinging in the background. It's when people are coming and going from the webinar. Can we turn that off?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thanks, Janice. Okay, so see how that goes. We'll see if it quiets down. If we just need to have something done, we might have to take a minute to see if we can get IT in to take a peek. But first thing I want to do before we get going is just introduce everybody. To my left is Janice Eric with, she's budget specialist. And we also have Deanne Hefner. She's always our special guest from the Nebraska Auditor of Public Accounts. And she's also brought a special guest. Do you want to introduce her?
Yeah, this is Rachel Henney, and she is in our office and works on budgets and helps review all the budgets that come in the door. And so she's here to get experience this year and listen to your questions if you have any.
All right. Last we have Bill Biven, budget specialist. And you're also going to notice we have a couple that are missing today. We have Tom Geschel. He is actually, we will not be doing the poverty and LEP auditing anymore. He's transferred over to SPED auditing. So you will still see Tom. He may be out at your district at some point in time reviewing your SPED information. And the other gentleman that's missing is Bryce Wilson, the administrator of school finance and organizational services. He will pop in later at the end of the presentation. He's listening to us. If anybody has, maybe a joke you want to tell, a good one that he could add to his portfolio. I don't think we're getting any in, but just in case you think of anything, holler. Do you have the clicker?
Yes.
Let me get to the next slide. Here. Thank you. The next slide we have here is essentially I think this is the link to the webinar. And what we also have there is the presentation material. If you want to print a copy of this handout and take some notes, or the last option is possibly if we have you for 2.5 hours today, but that length of time doesn't work for you, you can come back after and watch the webinar on our YouTube channel. So also there as well. Essentially, we just kind of use this time to have an informal discussion, not just cover what's upcoming and what's currently going on, and just essentially to get the opportunity for us to get any feedback from you or any information or questions you might have. So with that said, if at any point in time you want to ask a question, do so at that time, and we will just stop and address that. That's usually easier than coming back. I think that might be everything. Okay.
Some do, some don't.
We're kind of just taking a break here for a second. We have some that are having trouble with sound. It looks like there's another trying to get information about how to get it turned on. Okay, so I think we're starting to get there. I think we're okay to start going. And I think that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to turn this over to Deanne. And she's going to give us some information on budget, maybe auditing.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's summer is going well. On the screen right now, we have the state auditor's phone number. So in case you have questions during the budget process, you're welcome to call that number, and you can get a hold of me or Rachel, or we have some other people that work on budgets in our office. So you may get Jeff or Dakota or Marielle. All are familiar with the forms and should be able to help you. We also have our website listed there, and that's where you're going to go to get your forms and any information that you need. Okay. Screen is changes to the forms, and I'm sure everybody is excited right now that there's only one bullet under this title of this screen, and that's that the code numbers were updated. So that's good news on your part and our part, that there's not a lot of things listed here. And so we're not expecting a lot of issues this year with the form, since there really was not very many changes at all. Just kind of a reminder about changes that happened last year. There was the change of the publication of the notice. Remember that that is 4 days now. It includes the day of the publication, but does not include the day of the hearing. So for those of you who have been around a while, this goes back to kind of the interpretation that was several years ago, and then we had the little blurb in the couple years where we had to count 5 days, and now we're back to the total of 5 if you count publication and hearing, but otherwise you can count it as 4 for those number of days for the publication. Also, reminder from last year, the interlocal agreement report, that filing date changed from December 31st to September 20th. And also remember with that there is a delinquent filing penalty assessed to that now. So once you receive notice of the delinquent filing, a late fee of $20 a day can be assessed to that. The late fee can be all the way up to $2,000 per year for the delinquency. There is a provision in there that if you fail, we can come do the audit to determine whether or not what should have been on that form, or we can do the entire school audit for that year. I do recommend that you send that in with your budget. That way it's not a separate mailing or a separate filing and you don't just happen to forget to do it. You can do it early if you want. If you want to do it before the September 20th date or before you send in the budget, that would be fine. You just don't want to make sure that you don't just put it off and forget it altogether.
And there's a question.
Oh, all right.
4 calendar days or 4 working days for the publication?
It's 4 calendar days for the publication. So, yeah, so you could have some weekend days in there, or even the holiday of Labor Day in there when you're counting your days. So the other thing I wanted to bring up about the interlocal agreement report that you have to file with our office, remember that that is not for the school year. It's actually a July 1st of 2017 through June 30, 2018. So it's based on what you actually had as agreements over that period. So it's not really related to your budget as far as what you're budgeting to have in the future. It's what you had as actual agreements. So basically, at the end of this week, you know what agreements you had over that 12-month period. You can go ahead and fill that part of the budget form out, or that part of the interlocal agreement form. You can fill that out. So it's not what you're going to have in the future, but what you had in the past. So just want to make sure that everybody was clear about that. Okay, the other thing I wanted to make sure about is verification of filing. If you file electronically through our website, you should receive an email confirmation that that was filed in our office. Please keep that confirmation as support for verification that the budget was received in our office. We have had situations where a budget gets sent by the website, and for some reason it's lost in the cloud, or it's lost, I don't know, wherever it's lost in mid-sky, wherever, we don't have it. And if you have that confirmation, then we can track it down by that confirmation, and because we can tie down the exact day and time and everything that was sent in. So please keep those as some kind of support for your filing. If you mail or email your budget in, there's no response or confirmation for those. So just as a reminder that if you put that in the mail, and you know, we get approximately 2,500 budgets in at the same time there in September. So it takes us a couple of weeks to get those logged, make sure we have all of our budgets. So if you call and say, hey, that my budget got filed, we're not going to be able to answer that for you. It's going to take a couple weeks before we know if we have them or not. After that time, if we call and say, we don't have your budget, and you say, well, I mailed it, I don't know what to tell you other than you're going to have to send in another version. Because if we haven't got it, you're considered late. So you can certainly do certified mail if you want. That is your choice. But I strongly would recommend the electronic filing with the website, because it gives you the automatic confirmation, and that way you have some verification that it's on file in our office. Last year we did have some issues with schools not selecting their school name, and so the confirmation that they got back said that they filed the unified school instead of their specific school. So I did want to just go through a couple slides here about that. When you go to file your budget, you're going to go under our state website, and then you're going to go to the Submit Forms area. And it's going to bring up a screen similar to this. And at first you're going to say, well, where am I going to put my school in? I don't see that. Well, if you click on the type of subdivision, and what you do is if you click on the school district, it's going to bring up another selection after that lets you actually select the name of your school. And so last year what happened is we had people pull up the school district, the type of subdivision, and then they skipped that select the specific name. And when you do that, you end up with a confirmation that says the unified school was filed, because that's just the default of that subdivision name area. And so please make sure that you're clicking on your specific school when you get to that part. I know it's not there on the first screen. The reason for that is whatever your answer is in that type of subdivision limits the subdivision names. So in other words, instead of bringing up 2,500 names for you to scroll through, it only brings up school districts once you list school districts. Or if you'd happen to be a county, it would only bring up the 93 counties instead of the 2,500 political subdivisions. So just a kind of a reminder on that part as to what the deal is there. Also last year we had a lot of issues or questions about the Schedule B, and so I just want to make sure that we go over that a little bit this year. The Schedule B, there's a couple different sides to it, and this is a screenshot of the left side. This is the side that shows that you're in compliance with the levy. So this is going to start off with, okay, well, how much are you getting in property taxes? And hey, did you have any bonded indebtedness, or what other exemptions did you have? So the left-hand part of Schedule B shows how you're complying with the limit. If you're under the $5, whatever your limits could be, whether or not you're complying with that. The right side of that Schedule B is therefore helping the county set your levies, because the left side tells that you're under compliance with the levy limits, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the levy needs to be set at. And so we don't want the county setting your levy at $5 when in fact maybe it's supposed to be $6 or $7 because of exemptions you have. So this side of the page is to help the county identify how much you really need in property taxes, the value, and what you're expecting that levy to be set at. And so this is kind of a check off that you and the county can come to an agreement that that's what the levy is going to be set at. and there's no misunderstanding about whether it's the one that's showing you're under compliance or not. There should be lines there, and if we've done it correctly this year, it should be open to being able to be separated out. If you have multiple bonds or multiple QPUP funds, hopefully you can access those cells and separate those separate levies that you need out. If you do have a problem with any of the budget forms where a cell is locked that you need to get into, we will not release the password because it affects all the forms. We don't put on separate passwords for separate pages or anything. So we will not release the password, but you do have the ability to send that form in to me, and I can open it, allow whatever needs to happen, correct it or whatever, and send that form back to you. So if there is a problem, just email me your form and tell me what cell or what tab, work paper it's on, and we can adjust or go from there. But hopefully, knock on wood, there's no problems with the forms and issues with those this year. Okay, just as a reminder, couple key dates there. August 20th, that's when the assessors have to have the valuations out. September 20th, that is still the budget due date. That has not changed for years. October 13th, that's the last day to have the tax request into the county board. Remember, that's just the tax request. Most of you are going to have that done by September 20th, the same day as the budget. So a lot of you don't have to worry about the October 13th date, but there is a few that have election ballots or something going on where there may be an issue that they need to use that October 13th date. But most of you don't need to worry about that as long as you're filing everything by September 20th. But then November 5th, that is the last day to correct an error in the levy. So that is very important. After that day, the county has no authority to change an error. So if you wait around and don't find out that the county made a transposition error or did some kind of an issue with the levy that got set, and it's, we'll say November 30th, you're probably going to be stuck with the good or the bad on whatever that levy is. So just as a reminder, we always recommend you check with the county after they've issued all the levies. They should be publishing them after they set that levy in October, but if you don't have a publication, you can always call and get a copy of all the levies that were set just to check off and make sure that yours match up with what you expected to see. And then just as a reminder, on our budget forms, we do have a tab down there for a checklist. This is kind of a reminder of things you can go through to make sure your budget's gonna pass the checklist once it gets into our office. So if you go through this list and, oh, I don't have the valuation included, that's gonna be a problem. Or maybe I didn't include the proof of publication. So this is just kind of a reminder checklist to help eliminate some of those problems that we see. I think most of those first ones with the beginning and ending balances, I think we've corrected most of those because we blocked you out of some of those cells and forced that to work. But even so, in the event that those don't agree, that would be still a problem for filing of that budget. So I think that's, oh, I do have a couple other reminders. Just as a reminder, there is a statute out there that allows that if the budget happens to be adopted different than what was published, you have to publish a summary of that within 20 days. So as a reminder, you can hold your budget hearing. You could hold your budget hearing next week if you wanted to. That's up to you. But if you end up adopting a budget that's different than what you had told the public before that hearing, then you have to publish a notice telling them, hey, we said we were going to budget for this amount. We ended up budgeting for this. And you have to do that within the 20 days. Okay? So there's nothing that says you can't hold that hearing earlier than maybe some of you like to do on September 29th or 20th. But you can think about maybe your process, because maybe you want to do that hearing a little early if possible. The other thing as a reminder is it's budget amendment time. So you have to make amendments by the end of the fiscal year, and make sure that you follow all those amendments with our office, Department of Education, and the county clerks. And we do have example and instructions on our website for making amendments. There are certain things you have to include in that publication before you hold the hearing to do an amendment. So make sure you're including all those specific things. For example, you have to outline why you can't just reduce your other expenses to make up for whatever has occurred or why you need that amendment. So make sure you're getting all that in the hearing notice, so it's included in the publication. And then just a final reminder, this is again our website. If you're looking for the budget forms, you're gonna go out there under the local government tab, and you're gonna hit that budget information. And that's where all those budget forms are gonna be. That is also where the instructions on the budget amendments are gonna be. So if you're looking for those, you're gonna go under that budget information tab. And with that, if there's any questions, you can type those in, or I'll turn it over to Janice is next, I guess. Oh,
Janice. All
all right.
right, you didn't get rid of me so quickly. I have state aid coming up next. So essentially what I'm going to cover today, I've just made into a quick update notes form, just almost a checklist. And it kind of reminded me of, so I decided to put a Cliff Notes background because I remember back in the day, maybe, you might not have read the Odyssey book that you're supposed to read for Greek mythology, so you might have picked up the Cliff Notes. And so it just kind of gave you that high level overview. And actually, interesting side note, the Cliff Notes was actually started in 1958 here in Lincoln. The gentleman, Clifton Hilligus, worked at the Nebraska Book, and him and his wife produced these Cliff Notes from their home for many, many years. But so we'll just get going. And kind of said, it's just a checklist. Decide if you've taken care of it, decide if you haven't taken care of it, or make a note to pass it along to someone else who might. The first is going to be the lump sum payment for the 17-18 positive prior year correction. So if your district had a 17-18 positive prior year correction, you can apply for up to 100% of that correction as a lump sum payment to be paid this September 2018. And what it is if your positive prior year correction is greater than or equal to $1,000, we will notify you that by July 1st. I've already ran the eligibility list, so that's ready to go. You should be notified at any point in time. And then you need to respond by August 15th, and then by on or before September 15th, we will then notify you of that lump sum payment that will be in the September 18th payment, but also the reduction to all the remaining 9 state aid payments. If your positive prior year correction is less than $1,000, then we will go ahead and just make payment on September 2018 with no application. This was changed a couple of years ago in statute, just essentially to reduce the admin on us and you. And so less than $1,000, nothing to do. It'll come in your your September 2018 payment. Another item on the list is the change in school district boundaries due to annexation by a city or village. A district can apply for additional equalization aid if they have had a loss of property due to a change in school district boundaries, due to the change in school district boundaries from an annexation by a city or village. The city or village also has to have a school district within their boundaries that grew because of this valuation changes. If you're in that situation, then forms are available upon request. Just get in touch with me. I will make sure a form gets to you. Then when you get that form back to me, what I will do is get the form back to me. You also need to make sure that you send a copy of that form to the district that received the valuation in that transfer. when I receive the form, then I will get in touch with Department of Revenue, Property Assessment. They will then get me the legal description, parcel information, valuation information, and we will go ahead and recalculate the state aid, recertify the state aid, and make sure that adjustment in aid is in your first payment in September. So I went over to the Capitol the other day. I took this great snapshot of Lincoln's view from the Capitol. You can see, oh, it doesn't look very good there. NDE on the lower left. I know, it's a great shot, isn't it? You can see NDE on the lower left. You can see, well, it doesn't look right here, but you can see the portal up top, that antenna. That is how we collect all the information back here at the state office building from you that we use as a TIOSA accountability data. And, oh, there's even the commissioner out front of NDE reminding you. I know, I make fun of it, but make sure you go in. This is the time to go in and make sure you have the CDC collections for the end of the year completed so that we can go ahead and complete TIOSA and the recalculation. So there's the days in session you want to make sure you have taken care of, instructional program hours, pupil transportation will need to be completed by all public school districts and ESUs. And then in NISRs, you also need to make sure you've taken care of the student summary attendance. So those are kind of on your list of the collections that need to be taken care of well, the due date was June 15th. That's the date that the information comes into us. Then you have that 2-week audit window that you're going to go in, review the data, and also it has to be locally approved on your end. So you're going to want to make sure it is approved. The other item I want to make sure, though, that's also as important is that due date. We always do the deadlines are final, and deadlines are final. That due date also applies to reviewing the data. Many people get their data in, but it's not reviewed until later, and then that's when the snag comes that they need to change, and it doesn't happen. So just make sure you go in before June 30th and do a retake of that data. Have someone validate it. There's two aspects I would take when I would be reviewing the data. First of all, make sure the data came in correctly or was uploaded correctly from your student information system. Compare it back to that. And the other piece I would run is a relevance check. Run it to prior year data and just make sure it appears relevant. That's usually if there's anything incorrect, you'll notice it there too. So, let's see. Bill, I might not be. Okay, thank you. The other item I want to touch base on is advisor, which once was NISRs will become advisor. And I'm not good with this acronym, so I will not. I think it's Advanced Data Views, Improving Student Response. Maybe I'm close. Advisor is I think at this point, it's been kind of talked about. This will be your new student and staff data system. Instead of the templates, they use that EdFi technology that'll push the data from your student information system up to Advisor, and will be the system of record coming this 18-19 school year. And so I just touched base with the data team, asked if there is anything that you need to make sure you're taking care of in the next couple months. And they have mentioned to please make sure that you reach out to your student information vendor and find out when they will be releasing the Advisor update for 18-19. So they have made some changes to Advisor. Your SIS vendor will have to actually give a release and update to you so that you can get your system updated and be ready to go for the 18-19 school year. The data team did say, please make sure you do this by September 1st. That's just a good date to shoot for. I don't want to say no later than October 1st, but you'll run into trouble by then because there's some deadlines by then. So September 1st is a good deadline. On our end, Advisor will be updated on August 1st. And if you are interested enough to want to know what changes occurred, you can go to our website. In the search bar, type in Advisor Resources. It's going to take you to a new page where you can go see the Advisor 2018-19 changes document. And if you specifically want to know what changed. Coming this fall, that data team, has said they're going to focus their attentions right out beginning in the fall with state aid and SPED. Those are the enrollment information that'll be most important at that point in time. So that's kind of your advisor update today. Next is the 2018-19 recalculation. Just at the basic level, this is where when we run that certification and then go to a recalculation this fall, we will take out the fall membership, bringing in that snapshot of the entire year's attendance through average daily membership. Typically, we have the assessed valuation become certified valuation. I already had that as certification, so we're already at the certified. And the 2016-17 annual financial report, you need to make sure if you have any amended AFRs at this point in time, you need to have them in by July 31st to be part of that recalculation. I want to say the other day, Janice and Greg Prohaska were talking about maybe a handful of districts they're aware of. I'm just not sure if this is coding that impacts state aid or not. But if you know that you might have something to change, go ahead and get that in, or just check with your business manager and make sure you're good to go there. The next piece is a reminder. This is a question I get through the year a couple times, and so I just thought I would cover it. From certification to recalculation, sometimes people ask how we pay out that exact same amount of money, the same $1 billion. So at certification, the local effort rate, or that hypothetical tax rate that holds essentially your property accountable as a resource in the formula, is set at 5 cents below the maximum levy, which is $1. Then when we come back in the recalculation, we make all those changes that we just talked about, the student evaluation and the financials, make those changes, and at that point in time, we are still a state that is still budgeted, and so we still only will certify to the $1 billion that we, recalculate to what we certified at, the $1 billion. And so what happens is essentially the local effort rate is our balancing factor. It will be just above $1, just below $1 to make us still land at the $1 billion as the final total funding for state aid. Just on kind of the prior year correction, that's another one that is asked every now and then, is just what is it? And this one is easier if you just follow the dates. This spring we had our certification for the 2018-19 certification. This fall we'll come back and do the 2018-19 recalculation. The difference between the two is called that prior year correction. That prior year correction for 18-19 is then added to the 19-20 TIOSA aid will be paid out with those 10 payments. And so hence the name prior year correction. I think a lot of times people just overthink it, and it's, just follow the dates, you'll catch on to that easy enough. Another item for your checklist is going to be the LEP and poverty expenditure requirements. I have two topics on this one, the 17-18 expenditures. Essentially, state aid calculates a poverty allowance that is equal to the lesser of estimated expenditures or calculated allowance. What happens is the state wants the district to pay for 15% of the program costs, and then the district will be reimbursed at 85% of those costs through the poverty allowance in the equalization aid formula. 2 years later, when we actually receive the district's actual financials, is when the district will need to determine if they've met the 117.65% level, expenditure level. Otherwise, there'll be a correction on TIOSA to adjust that. So the first thing that you need to do to make sure that you've met that 117.65% of the allowance from 2017-18 is you're going to want to go in and make sure that first you've coded all your poverty to the 1150 function code and your LEP expenditures to the 1160 function code.
LEP is 50.
Is it?
It's 50, 60, I don't know.
It's 50, 60. I think
Yes.
50 is poverty, I think 60 is LEP. Correct me if I'm wrong though. Janice is gonna double check the coding. You got it there?
Yeah, LEP is 50.
Oh, excuse me. LEP is 1150. Poverty is 1160. Excuse me. Thank you. So make sure that you have the coding correct. After that, what we have for you is you can go out to the NDE website, go to the Finance and Organizational Services homepage. From there, what you will see is 2 reports. One is for LEP expenditure requirement. One is for the poverty expenditure requirement. We've already calculated the 117.65%. So you can then compare when you're doing your expenditures for the 17-18 AFR to make sure you've met that requirement without receiving a correction. The districts that will be interested in this is going to be the equalized districts that received a poverty allowance in 17-18. So those are the districts that I want to just do a double check. Now, upcoming for the 2019-20 expenditures, poverty and LEP expenditures, typically when you report to us your estimated expenditures, you will go into the GMS, you'll report, you'll put your plan in, you'll put your expenditures in. This year is the first year that it will no longer be in GMS. It's going to be in the CDC with all your other collections. It is under one collection. So LEP and poverty expenditure requirements is going to be one data collection, not 2. It's one field that you have to report. It looks just the same. It's just not in the same location, but it will be in the CDC. There'll also be reminders of this from the help desk. There'll also be reminders when we send out our monthly newsletter. So you'll get another reminder on that to get you to the right place. The districts that would be interested, of course, would be the equalized districts, would want to make sure that they do put in their estimated expenditures for poverty and LEP. Another change we had was through a pretty big technical cleanup bill was LB 1081. One of the items that I pulled off that is once it passed, it amended the fall school district membership date count. So we have been doing the last Friday in September and no longer exists. It's going to be October 1st. It amended 2 sections. One was for the K through 12 fall membership. And then the second section, 791003, is in the TIOSA, and that's going to do the qualified early childhood fall membership. So it's now October 1st is the date. The reason behind it is because essentially is we had a couple of enrollments that were falling under different dates. They just aligned it all under one date. This coming fall, when we're in advisor, we've got advisor to deal with, but it doesn't really change much. Essentially, what you just need to make sure is, as of October 1st, you'll have what I'm being told is about 15 days to basically do a check till October 15th. Make sure that your information in your student in your SIS looks good. Have any cleanup done by October 15th. So timeline still remains about the same. It's just it's changed technically. We'll be updating Rule 8 to align with that. It does not really change much on your end, but just be aware of that change. Sine Die, TIOSA numbers at Sine Die. Just a quick update just so you can see where we're looking down the road. The 2 columns that are highlighted, the first is the 1819 certification under current law, the $1 billion that we've already talked about for the past year. What the Legislative Fiscal Office is estimating for the upcoming year, 1920, is about $1.07 billion. It's about a $70 million increase over the prior year. So there'll be a little growth, right now is estimated at this time. Granted, it's very early. We will be tightening up that number once we get to October meetings, but this is where it stands today. If you look at a couple of the key assumptions, you already can kind of tell where the growth is coming from. That very top 2 columns, the 2.9 and 1.9, are the property evaluations of the equalized districts that will remain within the formula once it's calculated, is gone down. It's not declining. What it's doing is the growth is slowing down from 2.9 to 1.9. The other piece, that 2 items that were impacted are both items from LB 409 2 years ago, the temporary aid reduction. The cost growth factor that is used to grow the general fund operating expenditures will go from 3.3% to 4%, which typically is at 5% if you look over to the column to the right. We have 1 more year before we return back to the 5% growth on your GFOE. And the second item is that local effort rate will go down from the 1.0203 down to the $1 the following year. So Those all support some growth. Once we get more final numbers, we'll be able to see what's really going to happen. And the last kind of couple items I have for you is the most recent. There was a press release on June 15th from Senator Groney stating that there will be a TIOSA school funding legislative study group. And he does have 9 senators behind him at this point supporting him on this study group. And these are senators that have introduced prior TIOSA legislation. They have, or either they have just spent the time to get up to date on the issue. They represent districts all over the state. They also represent different size school districts, and they also have taxpayers that have been uniquely affected by the formula. Just as a side note, this is an independent study. It's not an LR through legislature. It's not, NDE did not initiate this study group. Our role in this will be going forward, any data they may need or TIOSA historical information. We will go ahead and provide that information at this point in time. It's fairly fresh and nothing's really started rolling quite yet for us on our end. This will happen over the 2018 interim, and the 2 issues they would like to address is property tax relief and basically stable and equitable funding for the public schools. They believe at this point in time there is a reliance, an over-reliance on property taxes, and the 2 factors that they believe contribute is since the origination of TIOSA, it essentially has not been equipped with a mechanism that can handle the rapidly increasing property valuations. And the second factor they believe is ever since that origination and every subsequent legislative session has also just at points in time changed the formula when revenues fell. So we'll see what comes from that, what information. It may be good to hear, some study, some information, and where we've been, where we've come. So we will wait to hear more on that. That's kind of the most latest. If for any reason you, I'm going to go back here real quick. For any reason you want to become more invested in this study group, if by chance your senator is listed on there, get in touch with them. Let them know that you have an interest in this. If not, you can get in touch with Senator Groney and see if there, what you can do or how you can help in any way if you'd like to become involved. Because the study's going on, if you want to become more updated with TIOSA and the formula, how it works, as always, on the Finance and Organizational Services homepage, you can go into the state aid. Every single year, we do update the TIOSA doc that has all the calculation information for each year. And then also it has all the AFR information if you're curious what coding we pull into it. So there's a resource there for further information. And last is Enrollment Option, which this is just my reminder to tell you Enrollment Option did not have any changes in this last legislative session. So nothing to get up to date on there. If you want to know any details, further information, what statutes apply, Rule 19 does have this information on Enrollment Option. We also have a FAQ that's rather lengthy with the most common questions that we run into each year. And that is it for state aid. That's kind of the high level. I'm just leaving my contact information. If anything comes up, you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I think I will pass this on to Janice. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm going to start talking about the budget. The budget and the pieces that you need to be aware of, kind of reminding things that going back over what Deanna talked about, but it's good reminders because it's so important. The information that we've posted everything on the FOS website, you'll find the budget text. And that budget text gives you a good description of all the inner workings of putting a budget together, how the exclusions work, and answer questions that you might have about levies and such in your spending lid. We do update that every year based on changes that might have happened in the legislature. So you need to download one every year for that purpose. The budget timelines are also posted, as well as the templates for the expenditure exclusions. Bill will talk about that more in depth when I complete my part of this. We've got the filing deadlines for state board approval for all expenditure exclusions as well. And there's a link on to the APA site so you can download your budget document if you haven't done that yet. The LC2 is in the portal as it has been for years, and every year you have to get a new activation code. So you'll have to go through that process under your sign-in piece and you have the drop-down box so you can get your activation code. And if you happen to be a superintendent that has 2 school districts, you're going to have to get a separate activation for each of those districts. The upload budget file button is very important because we want to stress the importance of you uploading your budget file into the LC2 every time you make a change, because the LC2 is in place to help you avoid any sort of problems so that you don't go over budget or something. So make sure every time you make some changes, you have to make sure and upload that budget each time. If you get an error, it's going to be a red error that's going to say you're over budget, or if you have too much in your allowable reserves. If you need some help with the portal and need to have help getting the activation codes, get in contact with the help desk. They'll be there to help you step through that piece. Here at the top is the first part of the LC2 you need to be aware of. Schools, if they have any unused budget authority from the prior year, they can pull in what's left. Not left, but it's a small percentage of what you have sitting there. So example, on line A355, you're going to have to key in that amount that shows to the left if there's a number there. Some schools won't have it because they've maxed out in the past. This number goes into A355 and you have to key that in manually or else it won't grab it for you. That's important because that number will go into your base so it stays with you in the future. The next section of the LC2, after you've uploaded it, will show you whether you've over budgeted. And this example shows that on it says budget authority exceeded. Well, you've got too much in your budget authority that you budgeted for. So $14,500,000 is what's budgeted, but you're over by 34,000. I can't see it. 24,000. So you're going to make some adjustments, either lower your budget, or else possibly there might be some grants that you haven't included, and you would include them there. The second section shows what you've carried over in the past, and the third section is shows the allowable reserves and what you've budgeted. Here's an example of what it shows when you have exceeded your allowable reserve percentage. You'll have to make adjustments to that to make that work. Be sure you, as I said before, make sure you upload your budgets every time you have a change, and it's very important that you do, before you print out your hearing notice and get it published, make sure you upload that budget one more time to make sure that you can check that you haven't gotten any of these error messages. The LC2 protects you. If it's, because we pull in the numbers that needs to be in there, it doesn't let you submit if you've exceeded your unused budget authority, or if you take access to prior unused budget authority in case you key in a number that's above what your amount should be, and then won't let you submit as well if you're over on your allowed reserves percentage. After you've gone in and clicked the district approval button at the bottom of the sheet, everything looks good. That's when you can upload your budget document. So you'll hold your hearing before you'll click district approval. And so once that's done, then you'll click that and this piece shows up where you can choose the file and it goes into your hard drive to pull out your budget documents. You'll need to make sure everything is sent this manner. We don't accept them that are emailed in or submitted by mail. By using this system, you're going to get an email confirming that we did receive it. So it's a better way for you. You know we've gotten that information. That confirmation mail would come out right away. We would hope that you sent all this in one package, in one document, so you'd have the budget doc, without, you don't need to spend or send any of the worksheets in. The proof of publication, the board minutes, the schedules you need, and the evaluation sheets. That all we like that in one big package. If you happen to upload it and feel like that it's not correct and you need to upload again to correct something, go ahead and upload the second one. We'll look at the most recent upload when we do our review. So as a reminder, please don't send in any hard copies at all. If you find yourself that you don't have enough budget authority, even with all the exclusions, you can go to a vote of the people in your district that provides budget authority for one fiscal year. And what happens, it builds into your budget, your base, so you can carry that forward to future years. Make sure if you do have to write a vote, like for a vote, the ballot language does include that you're going to access all the expenditure exclusions that are allowable by law. If you have any questions, you're thinking about doing this, give us a call and we can walk you through this piece. A few reminders. Make sure that you're using on the state aid line in the worksheet that you're using the total state aid amount that shows up on your certification document. And that's the bolded number toward the bottom. So you want to, the adjustments need to be in there. So make sure you're using the bolded number when you do key that into your budget documents. The motor vehicle taxes, you shouldn't be projecting less than you got the previous year because they should always be going up. County treasurer's balance, if you're kind of not sure what to use, just kind of make an estimate based on what you provided the previous years. The ending and beginning balances, that's an important factor in your tax request. If you're wanting to lower your levy for the 18-19 year, you'd want to have a higher beginning balance for the 18-19. If you want to have a higher, think you need more taxes, you're going to lower your beginning balance to make that work out. Again, if you have questions, talk to us about it. We can help you with that too. The worksheets, that's where you're going to enter all your information for the budget information. There's formulas, as Deanne talked about, that moves the information from the worksheets into the cover pages and the summary pages. Be sure you don't key anything into the summary pages because once you do that, those formulas are basically won't work anymore and the information is not pulling across correctly. One way you can check that, if you would look at your worksheet pages, see total disbursements and come over to the summary pages, then you can see whether there's been issues. But if you don't key anything into those summary pages, you shouldn't have an issue. Every year we have a couple questions about this, about making sure that their ending balances match the beginning balances. And what we're doing is looking at two separate documents. We're looking at the 17-18 budget that you submitted this past year. You're going to look at that document and lay it next to your 18-19 budget document. And you're looking at the actual pages, and that's on page 4 on both documents. You're looking at the ending balance of the 15-16 actual page to the beginning balance of the 16-17 actual page, and they need to match. If there's an issue with that, give us a call and we can help you with it. Sometimes if you've changed auditors, that may cause the problem, why it doesn't line up anyway, but give us a call and we can help you through that as well. The allowable reserves, there's 3 components to it. It's what you budget totally in the depreciation fund and the cash reserves and employee benefit fund and the cash reserve in the general fund. If you've seen that you might have some issues, not have enough room to stay within the allowable reserve percentage, I wouldn't budget anything in the employee benefit fund cash reserve so that you can put those reserve amounts only in the depreciation fund and the cash reserve. How this works, how the percentage works, and this is an example of a school that's between 470 and 3,000 ADM. So they have a 35% allowable percentage. So we take the general fund budget and figure out what 35% of it, and that's your allowable reserves, 3.5 million, and that's what has to be distributed between those three components. Going to the hearings, Deanne talked about this briefly. You're going to have your proof of publication in the paper 4 days before the hearing, and you're not counting the day of the hearing. You have required hearings. You have to adopt the budget, to set the tax request, and then if you need to be amending your budget now at the end of the school year, that's another hearing you'll have to hold. When you do hold the hearings, usually it's done before the board meeting, but it can be done a different day. It doesn't have to be done that day. And that an example of not doing it the same day in case you don't have enough people board members attending the board meeting to be able to take a board vote. But what you do, you'd open the hearing, provide hearing information for any patrons, or it has to be provided even though there's no one there. You close the hearing and then you take the vote during the meeting. Again, it doesn't have to be done that same night. In case you have an issue with the budget and there's an error, if the total budget's not affected by more than 1%, or the property tax doesn't increase, you don't have to hold a hearing, but you're going to have to put a summary in the paper. And with board action after you've had it adopted. And you have to find this error within 30 days, or after, if you've been notified by APA, Auditor of Public Accounts, then you have 30 days after that notification to get this piece taken care of. The property tax request lays out each of what you're asking for each of the taxing funds. The due date is the 13th of October, but that's a Saturday. So the latest that you can get this submitted is October 12th. As Deanne spoke earlier about, most schools do have their hearing for the tax request done at the same time as when they adopt the budget. So you'd have plenty of time to get this information into the county clerk. We do have examples of a property tax request resolution in the appendices of the budget text that you can follow and put together as well. This is the time of year that a lot of schools are calling in saying that they're seeing, after they've looked at their budget, they're finding that they're overspent. So usually schools are supposed to be able to find that ahead of time, but sometimes it's not done that way. Lunch funds and activity funds a lot of time are amended now at the end of the year. If you refinanced a bond for a lower interest rate, you have to also amend your budget for that. Say you have a summer building project that's exceeded what you expected to spend and it goes over what you have spending authority to in your building fund, you would need to amend that as well. So go through, this is a good time to do that right now. Check now what you're doing, your year-to-date spending for all your funds to see what you need to be doing. You may not have an issue, but it's a good time to check right now. Again, you publish the hearing notice 4 days prior to the hearing. You don't use the hearing date as one of those 4 days. Submit the proof of publications for board minutes, page 2 of the budget document to APA, the Department of Ed, and the county clerks. If you've amended your general fund or depreciation fund or your employee benefit necessary cash reserve, you're going to have to go into your Lc2 and make a change there as well. You'd amend that. A few last minute things to talk about. Looking at whether you're going to be setting in an expenditure exclusion when they need to be sent in. I think that since there's no July board meeting, the August board meeting will probably be packed full with expenditure exclusion requests. Make sure you're using the Lc2s while you're working on the budget, so as you make changes, you're making sure that you're not going over budget. And so you can see whether your levy and your reserve limits and your spending is okay. So your levy is not, there's no way to catch that. You're going to have to watch that yourself, but that's Schedule B takes care of that piece. Does the Lc2 and the budget match? Make sure that lines up. Again, publish the hearing notices, you got 4 days. Okay, you put it in the paper, you took it there, but did it actually get in the paper? Every year we get a call from a school saying, and it's usually a small newspaper, and the hearing notice never got into the newspaper like you expected it to. That's why it's so important to set your hearing date no later than probably the 10th, so that you have that extra time available in case you have to put it in the paper again, because you can't hold the hearing unless that notice has been in the paper. Approve the LC2 after you've gotten the board approval after the board meeting. Then you're going to submit the budget documentation to the MDE, APA, and the county clerks. Tax resolution goes to the county, and then make sure when they submit information back to you from the county that your tax request was set correctly. November 5th, you can't make any changes. About 3 or 4 years ago, we had a school in that situation, and they got pretty tight. It was their bond fund, so double check that information. A few other tips to think about. If you do have, now at the end of the year, if you have spending authority left in the general fund now, you might consider transferring some to other funds, like the depreciation fund, but you have to be careful. You're not going to be causing issues with your cash reserve percentage too, your allowable reserve, so you don't go over on that. Employee benefit fund, you'd look at the same way too. The school nutrition fund and activity fund, you could put in there. If you choose not to do that, that unspent general fund budget authority would increase your ending balance for 17-18 and increase it for the 18-19 beginning general fund cash balance. And that might be important to you in case that you didn't ask for enough taxes a couple years back, because you always get tight probably in February or March before your first draw comes, your tax draw comes. So you need to kind of take all this into consideration whether you want to make a transfer or not. And again, you got to confirm the county has set your levies correctly. Be sure to get in contact if you need any help with this. We're here all the time and set appointments, and Bryce will talk more about that when he comes up. I think now we go to Bill.
All right, time for expenditure and levy exclusions. Can everybody hear me? We have one comment that says they can't hear us. Okay. All right, the general fund expenditure exclusions, it allows the school to go over budget, over their expenditure limit, and most of them do require that you submit to get state board approval. There are two things that don't require state board approval. That's your special education budget, and then the special grant fund list that we actually, as an agency, submitted to the state board for approval in May. There is, on that, all over the place today. There are 7 total special supplemental grants on the special grant fund list. That's the insurance settlements, interfund loans, reimbursements for awards of the court, repayments to the county government for previous overpayments, short-term borrowings, special supplementary grants from city or county government, and then a special supplementary grant that you may have received from a corporation, foundation, or other private interest. The Lc2 expenditure exclusion, there are only 4 of those. They are the new elementary attendance site, the 2017-18 elementary education, early childhood education grant, reorganization support grants, and then a retirement incentive and staff development. For the new elementary attendance site exclusion, this is for all the costs related to the first year of operating a new site. Those costs can include salaries for all the staff of the new site, the utilities, maintenance, and it will likely qualify if the district's 18-19 state aid includes that elementary site allowance. The next one is the early childhood education grant. the districts can request the exclusion that's equal to or up to or equal to their 17-18 childhood grant. We provide that number, and we will put it out there on our website with a template that you guys just have to fill out and submit in. The reorganization grant is for only newly merged and reorganized districts, and it must be approved by the state reorg committee. And then for the Schedule A of the budget document, there are 6 total exclusions that need to be placed on there. Repairs for damage by a natural disaster, any judgments, distance education, and then the 2 that are primarily used on there is the voluntary termination agreement and the retirement contribution increase. And then just last year, we added the Native American Impact Aid piece. The infrastructure exclusion is, it has to be declared a disaster by the governor or FEMA. A couple examples would be flooding, tornadoes, or wildfires. And then the judgment piece, the district must have a judgment entered against it that obligates that district to pay a judgment. And then it does not include any orders from the Commission of Industrial Relations. Distance education courses, that's any distance education course provided through the ESU Coordinating Council to other schools or districts. And that exclusion is the amount that is actually received payment-wise from that other school district. Voluntary termination agreements got very cloudy or muddy last year. They made some changes to it. It eliminates exclusions resulting from voluntary termination agreements from collective bargaining agreements, and that went into effect September 1st of 2017. And it is incentives for certificated staff that can also include insurance coverage for that member or any member of their family. So when it comes to the voluntary termination agreement for that certificated teacher, after September 1st of 2017, the incentives cannot exceed $35,000, and the incentive has to be paid within 5 years or prior to becoming eligible for Medicare, whichever comes first. And then on the template that is on our website, you have to show a 5-year savings within the salaries and benefits. And also the teacher cannot be included in the certificated or in the collective bargaining agreement. And with the template, like again, it's for certificated employees included in place before 9/1 of 17. The exclusion is 100% paid out if it was prior to 9/1/17, and then as you can see here, it decreases each year. Since we've passed 17-18 school year, the 75% is gone. So now you're looking at any retirement occurring after September 1st of 17. The exclusion is only eligible for 50% for the 18-19 school year. Next year for 19-20, it'll be 25, and then it will no longer be available for the 20-21 school year. The retirement contribution increase, probably the most common exclusion used by the districts, is essentially the difference between the district's contribution rate of the 9.88% and then the statutory rate of 7.35%. All right, so we have a question of, does a district need to be at its levy limit and its budget authority to qualify? For which one, I'm sorry?
Well, for any of the spending exclusions, you would only want to use those if you are at your spending limit. If you're not at your spending limit, you want to be using your budget authority instead of getting more budget authority. Otherwise, it goes into the unused budget authority pot. So if you're up against spending, if we're talking about spending authority, exclusions, then you want to make sure you're out of spending authority before you're using those. You can apply for them because you may not know where you're going to fall once your budget's complete at this point. So it doesn't hurt to apply for them and have them kind of in your pocket, so to speak, and then just use them only if you need them. It doesn't hurt you to apply for them and not use them.
And just so everybody knows, that was Bryce. He has joined us now and graced us with his presence. So hopefully that answered your question. And then for the newest exclusion is the Native American Impact Aid, and that truly only applies to the districts that are with the Native American, and that's available to districts with Native American land within its boundary and received impact aid due to children residing on the Native American land attending the school, and the statute is up there at the top. So if you go to our website, which is the address there at the top, and you go down to where the arrow is, you'll see the templates for the 3 exclusions that need to be sent in to me. The retirement contribution increase, the voluntary termination exclusion, and then the early childhood education grant. Click on those and again, fill out the numbers that you have and then email those back into myself. When it comes to state board approval, please round your dollars to your numbers to the nearest dollar. Also include exclusion in the budgets prior to state board approval. So if you send it in after the submission deadline for whatever month you would like, it's okay to still put it into your budget documents prior to getting that approval from the state board. But in the next breath, verify that the amount that you submitted was approved by the state board after you get notification that it was sent to the board.
Which is on our website
Yes.
and should be available within
The week after the state board meeting of that particular month. So here's my contact information, there's my email address, and then if you have a fax machine, you can fax it to the number there. And here, just like Bryce said, here is the web address also where you can find it. And this is current, so the only expenditure exclusions that have been approved by the state board were from the June 8th, 2018 meeting. There is not one for July, so the next one you will see up there will be the August meeting, so there's still plenty of time to submit those exclusion requests to me to get in for the August meeting. Here is the timeline. So yeah, July 13th to get it in. There is no August 43rd. I believe that would be August 3rd.
sure.
I don't think any year, but hey, whatever. So yeah, August 3rd, I believe, is that date. And then you can see there's August for September and so on down the line. All right, now we're down to the levy limitation. Again, it's $1.05, and that includes your general fund levy, your special building fund, and then your QC Puff levy if you have those last two. Not included in the levy is the bond principal and interest. And then the general fund levy exclusion that allows the district to levy over the $1.05 limit. And then you will also see all where your $1.05 or above or below that is on your budget schedule B of the budget document. And then the levy limitation. Looks like I've got two slides in there at the same time. So on the Schedule B, you'll have the voluntary termination with the certificated employees, the judgments, and then bonded indebtedness for bond principal and interest for your bond fund, your QC Puff fund. And here's a list of the exclusions. As you can see, there are 5 levy exclusions. And then there are 12 expenditure exclusions. I just keep putting that same slide in there. Oh, I think I'm going backwards. Awesome. I'm hitting the back arrow instead of the forward arrow. Excellent. All right, so Bryce is here. I will pass this on to him, and we will have a poll questions at the end when he is done, so please do not take off and leave the meeting right away. We would really appreciate you guys answering those 2 questions we have at the end. So I have to eliminate the screen share to do it. So if you want to do that, I can. Otherwise, we can wait till the end. So here's Bryce.
All right, well, good morning. Just going to touch on a few things, kind of a different array, I guess, of random topics. I'm going to start out with the annual financial report. Just want to remind everybody, I know, at least I hope, that everybody is working on their conversion to the new ESSA account codes, or done with them, hopefully. If you have not heard of the new ESSA account codes, I would recommend finding a new state to live in. I don't know, something. At this point, hopefully you've heard of that. But anyways, I know you're all working on the ESSA stuff. What I want to make sure that people understand, and hopefully we've been putting this message out there, is your 17-18 AFR still has to come in the old format. So even though you're converting to the new stuff for the beginning September 1st for the 18-19 school year, your 17-18 AFR has got to come in just like it has in the past, and the same account codes that we used we use now until September 1. I know some of you have, because of how your software works, had to convert over, and you're going to be mapping those back. If you do have any questions on that, I would start with your software company, but we're more than glad to help with what we can. We just don't know, the specifics of how you guys are the mechanics of how that works for your school. But regardless, the user's manual, actually it says there it'll be available early July. I think we may beat that, and it may be up yet this week, it sounds like. So you can look for that with all of the updates to the 17-18 account codes, some of that stuff that comes through at the last minute. You'll be able to see all those changes are right at the top of that, like usual. I've had several requests on the ESSA stuff around, or we're going to produce something similar to this with the new 18-19 account codes. We are planning to do something. It'll look a little different because of the massive increase in account codes and information there, but we do plan to create some kind of document that is similar to in use and ability, hopefully, to the user's manual. So that will probably be a next spring type of time frame for that. So the AFR online system, again, is where you'll upload that AFR spreadsheet one last time this year. One of the changes you'll see this year on that AFR is you no longer have to upload those poverty and LEP narratives that I know everybody loves so much, because they all came in copied the same year after year after year. With the changes in LB 1081 that I'm pretty sure Jen talked about earlier, we did away with those poverty and LEP plans as far as submission of those, what you're going to do for activity and stuff. I know she said, as you noted, if you want to receive the poverty and LEP allowance yourself, to submit the dollar amounts, but we don't need the narratives anymore, so you won't see that. So that's just a key on that. As far as new account code changes for 17-18 that we just want to quickly alert you to, 3134 receipt code is the railroad and public property tax credit. Previously, we had people code that in 3132 personal property tax credit. Basically, that railroad one is going to be around. I don't think we understood at first that it was going to be an annual credit. We thought it was a one-time thing. So there's a new account code there. Presidential declared disaster receipts. You'll see the local, state, and federal account codes there. So anytime you have a state declared emergency or federal, and you get disbursements from the different levels there, you code it accordingly. And then IDA Part B transition projects, we have the receipts and disbursements coded to 4417. Those are for the SPED discretionary projects there. And then object code 395 and 396 are going to be your object codes you're going to use with the federal account codes receipts. So, or I should say expenditures. When you make expenditures that are over 25,000, they'll go in that 396 object code, and when they're under that, they'll be in 395. So you'll be looking to have function codes 4,000 this year that go with that object code, and then next year it'll be 6,000 as those switch. And then that object code 955 is one that will go with those presidential declared disaster expenditures. One thing to know with that, so you're going to see, or I guess we would expect to see that 955 object code may go with a whole lot of different function codes, because it could be used in the building fund, it could be used in the general fund, even the lunch fund, and potentially co-op and contingency funds. So there's about 5 different funds that we think could potentially end up having that presidential declared disaster expenditures associated with it. So know that that's there. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the ESSA changes, and I know that's everybody's favorite topic. I have these guys there because I think a few of you out there probably feel like it's been a little bit of a rough ride. I would say we probably feel the same way. I know this conversion's been a lot of work for a lot of people. We've had the emails and the phone calls to confirm that. And again, as I've said many times, it's been that way for us too. What I would tell you is I'm hopeful that the rough ride of the summer and the spring turns into somewhat of a fairly smooth transition this fall. Once we get through the worst of it, I'm sure there'll still be some hiccups and some it's just challenges that will be there, but hoping we're getting about through the worst of it. For those of you who haven't got far into it, again, just going to point you back to our website with the ESSA information. I think there's a lot of good information there. Start with the frequently asked questions. We still get a lot, and we still update that document if we have questions that are repeated. That's really slowed down because I think a lot of you are getting through it. Also, the ESSA function and object code description file. Look at that one, and then the crosswalk. So if you're wondering what was an account currently and what is it going to become under the new ESSA account codes, you can use those documents. The one I don't have up there, it's because it's a massive document, but it's also one when you're making the conversion you need to refer back to is the master list. It probably wouldn't be the first thing I'd look at if I'm jumping into this, but once you get into the middle of the process, you're going to need to use that to see what accounts are available in each fund, because if it's not on that master account code list, we're not going to, our system will not accept it when you try uploading it to us eventually. So you got to make sure it's on there when you're putting it into your new account system. So we have, I know there's been a lot of changes to this as we went through this process, almost 2-year process at this point. We have significantly slowed down on those changes. We're now down to we're kind of trying to keep about a monthly update. We just have a few things that pop up here and there. What I'll tell you is we'll have a update coming out later this week. And I don't see I wouldn't consider any of the changes major changes. All of them are what I would say very small at this point. So hopefully not any of you are panicking out there saying, now what do we got to do to make these changes? So again, pretty small. We're looking at, we're adding codes 4211, 6211 for Title I support and improvement. Again, any changes we make will be on a change tab so that you can easily identify what has been changed since the last time with the date that the change was made. It will also be highlighted in there. Try to draw attention to it any way we can just to make sure people don't miss those changes. So go back and check that. Hopefully, again, we won't do this any more than monthly. And even by this fall, I don't know that we'll need to do it. It may just delay until the spring when we kind of do our user's manual update. But we have IDA Part B peak projects, which is 4418 revenue code and disbursement code of 6418. Employee benefit fund, this is probably the biggest change that we're adding right now, and that is just that we're adding the 200 series object codes into the employee benefit fund except for 237. So you'll see those in there if you're using them. I don't think there's a lot of districts that use that information or will be using those, but I do know that we have some use of that. Also, we have just some description updates. So on that description file, the 2110, we're adding student information systems to 2110. I won't change anything else about that definition or description. 3500, we added that description, it just got left off. The account code was listed in the master file list, it just wasn't on the description file. So we, same as it's been past, this other state categorical grants, revenue, and the 510 object code, we're adding contracts. 519, we're removing payments for parents transporting their own children. And then in 520, we've added to be used with function codes 2310, 2610, and 2700. So just some clarifications there. Also on our master file list, we had in the QC Puff fund, if you use that one, we had 1509 in the revenue side. We had 1509 listed in there, should have been 1510. So it was just off a digit. That's interest income in the QC Puff. And then 5610 was listed as 5609, and that was just cash balance from a dissolved merged district. So probably very few of you using that one. And then we're adding 521 object code description, fidelity bond premiums into the description file, which it is already on the master file. It's just not in the description. So again, just small little cleanups that shouldn't cause any of you big changes. Probably a lot of you won't cause any changes. So a couple of clarification on questions that are still that I get on a regular basis. I think I efficiently scared many of you from using only district level expenditure account codes, because I've gotten a lot of questions now with people asking, is it okay to use a district level expense code for certain things? The answer is absolutely yes. It is absolutely okay to code some expenses to the district level, because if average daily membership is the best way to allocate a certain expenditure, then that's where you want to code it to the district level. I just don't want, or we don't want, a school district saying, I'm not going to do this to the school level at all. I'm not going to put any effort in. I'm coding everything to the district level, because that's not accurate. I think the majority of your salaries should be coded to school building level. And, even if you just get that, that's 80% of your costs or 75% of your costs at a school district. We want districts to make a real effort at it, but is coding some of your expenses at the district level acceptable and appropriate? Absolutely. So we would expect to see that every district is doing that to some degree. Now, one of the things you want to be careful with that is, so you may not have a great way to allocate expenses, but you want them done just off of membership, but only for your elementary buildings. Well, you can't code it to the district level, because that's going to go to your high school buildings too. So if you're just trying to do it to your elementary buildings, you're going to have to do the allocation yourself based off average daily membership, or if you're trying to do it early in the year, another similar method would be your fall membership. I think is one that I would expect many schools to be using. So I guess just know those options are available for a reason, because it is okay to do that. Just I guess again, don't want to see a district code everything to the district level. That one will probably be returned. So hoping that doesn't happen. On Rule 1, something to make you aware of. Hopefully today I will be sending out an email to your auditors. You should have received, if you're a superintendent, a survey from us at the end of May, early June, asking for your auditor information. This is the reason why. We are requesting right now, and then maybe adding to Rule in the next year, a standard format for the statement of cash sheets, disbursements, and fund balance for the school district auditors. Just trying to get some similarity or comparability between school district audits, so that the public can easily see and compare between school districts these different balances. Also, there's 3 reasons really why we're doing this. That's 1. 2 is this lines up with how the budget document is, and it should make, when you're completing your first year column with the actual information, it should be able to easily match up to that first year and make it very simple for you to fill out that first column on your budget document. So hopefully it's helpful to you. The 3rd reason is it is also helpful to us, because when we go through and compare your annual financial reports to the audits, they all line up nice and clean then, hopefully is what we're hoping. But that is the desire, and that's what we're going to be sending out to the auditors, requesting them. I'm going to try and get a blurb in our July and August SFOS emails. So please forward that on to your auditor, and just to double make sure that they're getting that information and know that we're requesting that. We'll be presenting, well, I'll be presenting to auditors, to school district auditors tomorrow at a CPE conference. And then Jen and Bill will cover it again with another group in July. So we're trying to hit them and give them a heads up on that, know that's coming. Along with the rule, also be aware, we are in the process, or just begun the process, of updating Rule 1, 2, and 8. Are all going to need some updates based on these changes were noted here. Also, the ESSA changes, the LB 1081 with the date change for fall membership, and those are kind of the big things. But regardless, those things are affecting. The poverty and LEP plan also is the other thing. So those changes are requiring us to update each of those 3 rules. Know that that'll be happening in the next year. Along the rule line, I guess for a few of you that have to deal with transportation too, Janice and I just yesterday finally wrapped up Rule 91 and 92, which are the transportation rules, and got those to the paper for the public hearing. So we'll be having a public hearing on July 30th with those to go to the state board, that August board meeting, to try and get in place procedures to handle the replacement of school bus permits that have got taken out of law during the last legislative session. So I know that's in the works too if you work at all with transportation.
Bryce Levon says, can you send out the information for us to send to the auditors again, please? We don't recall receiving it.
You have not received anything yet on that information. So again, that's going out. The email should go out to our auditor list today, and then we're going to include it in the SFOS emails in July and August. And actually, our SFOS July email may come out this Friday, if I remember right. We may be sending it out early, so with the July 4th holiday. So you should get it a couple times there. Also, I guess if you don't get it, maybe we'll put that. Do we have an auditor piece on our website? Maybe we can link that out. Maybe we can link that out on our website too, under the current issues, just one more place. So again, sorry. Response letter to management. Just a quick reminder here that again, essentially, if you can ask your auditor to add on to this, your responses to the management letter items, then that covers your requirements and statute to report those to us. It just makes it simpler for us. It's all just uploaded once and taken care of them. So I think it's always I guess if I was a school district, I'd ask my auditor to do it. Some auditors will do it and some won't. They want to do it separate. So you'll just have to work with them. They'll either do it or they won't. Superintendent Transparency Act, just a reminder that if you haven't uploaded your superintendent's contract or your ESU administrator's contract, that has to be done by August 1st, or you're behind the deadline there. I don't think we actually start withholding any state aid or property taxes until it's not submitted by October 1st, but just make sure that's, if you have a new one, it's updated, or if you don't have a new one, that you resubmit it there by August 1st. Census collection opened just the other day, I think yesterday. Make sure you get that completed. One of the keys in there, we found out a few school districts had zeros for certain age groups in their district. If you have a zero, you have to make sure you input a zero to submit that. Otherwise, it causes an error in the system. But make sure those are completed by July 10th. There's an audit window from the 11th through the 20th. If you have any questions on that, Janice would love to have a conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Our online exempt school system that we kicked off last year, if any of you work with that at all, you'll know that there were a few bumps in the road, I guess as usually there are with any new system. Just took us longer to review stuff and get through things last year. Hopefully that we got those bugs worked out, kinks out. What I will tell you about that is you could make sure you're using that to check on the enrollment status of your kids that are not showing up that you're wondering about. So there's basically 5 different, you can pull up as a school, you can pull up a report, and there'll be 5 different categories kids will show up as. They'll show up as started working on, which means they have opened an account in the online exempt school system. They have not filed anything. So they're still have to be on your rolls until they filed something with us, and they're still your responsibility at that point. Once they show up as submitted pending review or submitted under review, you kind of got to leave them alone and let the process work. They're in process of being checked and making sure that all of their information is submitted to us. If you see exempt date, that means their filing is complete and everything is taken care of and they're officially have met the Rule 13 requirements. If you see filing incomplete, that means that they have not met all the requirements in there. We're waiting for information. At that point, your school district will be notified that we're missing information and you'll want to follow up with them. So if you have questions on that, as always, you can check with Beth and Mickey in our exempt school department and follow up with them. But hopefully that's a system that makes that a lot easier for you. Opportunities for budget assistance. As usual, we're going to be doing, first of all, we do new superintendent orientations for those first and second year superintendents or business managers, and assistants that work with that stuff. Any of the finance stuff are welcome to attend. Oftentimes, even if you're not a first or second year, but you want to come back for a refresher, you're always welcome to do that too. Or if you just like the good jokes you get to hear there, you're welcome to attend.
All right, we have a question from Josh that we have addressed this before, and it's not an easy answer. Our software company allows us to work on the new codes, but once activated, we'll change all of the codes to the new codes, even from previous years. Is this going to be a problem?
So that question is a good question. And again, we've had that question before. The answer to that is possibly. Then that's really not a question we can answer because, like I said, the 17-18 has to be submitted in the old format. All of the vendors are very well aware of that fact. And so my understanding or my assumption, I should say it's more an assumption because we've had these conversations with all of the vendors, is that they will provide a means for you to be able to submit it in the old format, whether that's mapping it back
Reverse mapping.
or some other method. I can't tell you what that is, but your vendor should be aware of it, and that's really probably a question I would ask them as soon as possible.
Okay, and then we move on. Hopefully that clears it up a little bit. We do have two questions asking about the dates posted right now. It says, is it July 19th or July 17th in North Platte?
Okay, so apparently I did not get the dates updated on this one. I thought I did. I even double checked it. So it is July 17th, not July 19th in North Platte and July 19th in Lincoln. So it's up 2 days for both of those dates. It's Tuesday and Thursday of that week. So I apologize for not getting those dates updated. The website does have the correct dates.
Okay, and then the final question right now is, where do you sign up for the new soup workshop, or do you just attend?
Send us an email to sign up. We do need to get, if you don't get signed up, we're not going to turn anybody away. We want you still to come.
Doorman.
But it does help us to have an idea how many people are coming. So we'd like you to send us an email, and we'll forward that on to Mickey, and she will get you what you need to do that. The fee is minimal, and it goes directly to me, or there is no fee. Just the pain of sitting through a day's worth of fire hose type of information. Basically, the format of those days, in the morning, we'll start at 8:30, and we'll go till lunchtime, and we will kind of do a presentation style PowerPoint where we feed you full of a lot of information as fast as we can. We'll let you try and digest that for a second over lunch. Then we come back in the afternoon and we'll give you an opportunity to just ask questions one-on-one, work with us, go through your budget, ask TIOSA questions, ask what you should know, what you should be concerned about, any of that stuff. All afternoon we'll stay there and come back and do that with you, kind of set up stations to do that or work around the room. So that's been the format, seems to work pretty well. But that's how those will go.
So yeah, just send those emails to Bryce, Janice, or myself. Include yourself, and then business managers are able to come. So if you're going to bring a +1, just let us know how many you're bringing and then what district you're from, and we'll get that taken care of for you.
Hey, also on the ESSA stuff, if you have any questions between now and then when it sends, please either type those in or ask them. No, there's a lot of questions on that still. It's just such a broad topic. We don't have time to go through all that stuff. I will hit a little more on that at Administrator Day's presentation. And then we're going to have a poll here coming up that really like to get feedback on. So one last opportunity for ESSA, kind of an ESSA workshop, help session, work day, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. We have right now ESU 10, a room reserved out there the Tuesday afternoon before Administrator Days. So that from like 1 to 4, I believe, where for anybody, and Bill's going to put a poll up here at the end once we're done with a couple more slides to find out if that's something people would find helpful. We don't want to waste anybody's time, and it'll be somewhat similar to what we did with kind of the data conference, where we just are there to answer questions, go over anything we can help with, coding questions. I think what we're thinking we'll do is give all the vendors a heads up that, hey, if we do it, we're going to have a work day and we may have a lot of questions. So we just call them in if we have questions. But right now, that's what we're making available is kind of a last minute. I'm very hopeful that most of you are to the point by then that you're mostly done with this, but I assume there's always kind of those last minute questions. So we thought maybe it would be helpful and people would be out there. So answer that poll at the end if that's something you would attend that it would be helpful to you. If not, that's great information for us too. We have no problem canceling it and doing something else. So budget. Speaking of Administrator Days, we will be out there on Wednesday and Thursday, on top of potentially Tuesday afternoon, to provide budget assistance like we have in the past. No difference. We'll be upstairs in the Ruby rooms. We don't have a room specific number yet, but listen for the loud room probably is the best way to go there, and you'll find us, or look for the donuts, I guess, if they're closed. I suppose. So we'll also be doing a presentation. Jen and I'll have a presentation out there on school finance update type of stuff again, where we'll cover anything that we think you need to know for the upcoming year, including the ESSA account code changes, TIOSA changes, any updates there. So we'll be out there. As always, you're always welcome to email in your budgets for us to review. Janice, Bill, or I will take a look at them, set up appointments, come in and meet with us. Or same thing with the ESSA questions too. Please don't wait till that last minute thing. If you have stuff you want to ask, please let us know. We want to help however we can. Make sure you're following along on Twitter for the updates, and I like to keep it fun and make sure you don't miss my tweets if that helps at all. So know that's available as a resource too. And then there's the contact information for the 4 of us. We've posted a new job too for a kind of a research specialist, data specialist, to help us along on some of the school finance research we need. With that, Bill is going to bring up the 2 polls. One poll we just want to know is your interest in that Works Day session. So if you could quickly, and I don't think we record who says what, so you don't have to worry about getting in trouble there. But if it would be helpful to you, and the second poll is just to let us know how far along you are on the ESSA coding conversion. So if you'd let us know those two things, that would be great. I think we'll give this poll about, what, a minute?
Yeah, where there's approximately 70 in there and 39 have voted. So,
And then
I'll put
we'll
up the
switch
next
over
one.
to the other one and not keep you too long. One last request, since I didn't make it in here right away, if you heard any of my team giving me a hard time before I got here, please send me an email and let me know that I need to be listening to the whole recording. Their reviews will be coming up in a few months, so.
Send jokes, please.
Yeah.
He needs new material.
I work for the state.
But thank you for, we have one more poll. You're gonna switch it over, Bill?
Yeah.
Okay, we're switching over to the other poll. With that, after you log onto that one, I think that's all we have for you today. Thank you for listening. Let us know how we can help you. You recorded that?
Yes.